Emily McCready, and I am an analyst at Planet Retail R&G, primarily focusing on omni-channel research. On today's webinar, we will be previewing our upcoming key capability report on rethinking front of store, the full version of which will be available on the Planet Retail portal in the next few weeks. The session today is scheduled to last for about 25 minutes, so there may be some time for questions at the end. If you do have questions as I go through the webinar, please feel free to use the GoToWebinar chat functionality, and I'll endeavor to answer them at the end. So as you've probably heard before, we have created 4 winning strategy reports to help retailers and brands correspond to the future trends that will affect the industry. Those 4 winning strategy reports include e-commerce and digital ecosystem management, supply chain and fulfillment, shopper engagement and retention, and the store of the future. Within the Store of the Future report, we discussed the urgent need to reinvent physical stores and the 6 fundamental capabilities required to do so. One of these, and the one we will be focusing on today, is rethinking front of store, which looks at solutions to continue to sell impulse products as the point of sale transforms. So on our agenda today, we have first off, a brief introduction of the current situation, followed by the emerging touch points that are replacing the traditional checkout. And finally, we will categorize supplier solutions based on their point of engagement and fulfillment, building on 4 main categories that instigate impulse. Those will include things like pickup prompts, online optimized solutions, in-store innovation, and curbside capture. I'd like to start off by looking at how important the checkout experience is to a shopper trip, because as it stands today, the checkout experience has become as important as price in maintaining customers and keeping them satisfied. We know that 32% of global shoppers agree that shopping is as unpleasant as doing the dishes, and 66% of those link their displeasure with the checkout experience, making it a very significant priority for retailers as they allocate their investment initiatives. And what's striking is that a bad or slow checkout experience can result in significant revenue loss, as shoppers will either shop at a different chain or purchase fewer items so that they can go and use the express lanes instead, or even abandon their shopping trip altogether, which obviously we would like to avoid. At the same time, though, it does give retailers the opportunity to diversify their checkout options, because shoppers are willing to use self-checkout lanes and self-scanning options instead. So the bottom line is that the checkout is a defining factor in customer satisfaction, and therefore retailers should really make sure that their experience is as frictionless and quick and easy as possible. In terms of new initiatives being rolled out and expanded, I think it's important to sort of keep track of the level of customer adoption and satisfaction with these new front-end solutions, because obviously it's very important that shoppers see the value in these front-end initiatives if retailers and brands are going to be investing in them. So it's evident that self-checkouts have by far the highest level of adoption, which is 90% here. While click and collect services have the highest level of satisfaction among shoppers. And this is interesting because currently 4 out of 10 online shoppers in the US are using click and collect, and they place about an order for pickup every about 6 months, and they spend an average of $58 per order, which of course is an important opportunity for physical stores to leverage online orders. Self-checkouts have been particularly popular in Europe, but are also gradually increasing in scale in the US thanks to their sort of labor savings and convenience. And we're also seeing US retailers sort of add different elements to them. So for example, Target is looking to make the experience more intuitive by adding emojis next to produce items to assist with the product search of non-scannable items. And then similarly, BP in the UK is trialing a technology that makes the process even faster by adding technology that instantly scans all the products inside a basket at once. However, there are more technologies that will disrupt the front end even further. And as retail is undergoing rapid change in all operational areas, the front end in particular is expected to be significantly impacted by the use of new technologies. And although markets like China are currently leading in these innovations, 52% of Asian retailers say that achieving return on investment is the main barrier to innovation, while 60% of them struggle to achieve cross-departmental cooperation when innovating. At the same time, the biggest driver behind investing in digital transformation is to improve the customer experience, as technology is driving customer expectations at a faster rate than retailers are able to apply new technologies. Nonetheless, we expect to see checkout-free technology and artificial intelligence to be tested at an accelerating pace as retailers fight to stay ahead of the digital transformation in retail. And sort of what we are seeing in particular is that there are now more than 1,200 unmanned and checkout-less stores in operation globally, with this number slowly increasing every week. The tests of unstaffed and checkout-less formats continue to grab headlines, but also point to sort of a future of more frictionless, digitally integrated stores that suppliers must be prepared to support. Current tests are concentrated in Asia, particularly in China, where mobile first and technology savvy shoppers are willing to try more digitally integrated stores and generously share their personal information, which is not necessarily the case in a lot of other markets. They're being tested by some of the largest retailers in the world, including, of course, Alibaba, JD.com, Amazon, and Auchan, and by technology companies as well that are sort of making their first foray into retail. And while unmanned formats differ, I mean, some are essentially walk-in vending machines, others are simply automating the checkout process in the physical stores, or others can just move the physical location altogether. They're all sort of responding to the same growing consumer demand for convenience amid rising labor costs. They are particularly effective for keeping a store open 24 hours a day, especially in urban areas where staffing around the clock would, of course, be unprofitable, and in rural areas where having a manned store wouldn't be economically feasible. The explosion of unmanned stores will continue throughout 2018, with some companies claiming they plan to open as many as 100,000 stores over the next 3 years, but most are still in the testing stage and are far too early to declare expansion plans of that size. With daily revenues as low as 150 to maybe $300 and high upfront costs, these stores will need considerable scale or even price markups to become a widespread sort of sustainable model, but will of course continue to find niche applications because of their flexibility. And the data that unmanned stores can collect on shopper behavior and preferences will, of course, be very, very important because it can inform future assortments and merchandising decisions across convenience portfolios and not just unmanned stores. For example, the Just Walk Out concept made famous by Amazon Go will, of course, potentially be tested in things like prepared food sections of larger supermarkets, for example, in Whole Foods, which creates sort of a faster on-the-go meal trip and again is sort of the goal. But let's sort of take a step back and look at some of the basic factors that are driving the reinvention of the front end. The traditional checkout of multiple lanes that's operated by human staff and displays sort of a variety of impulse items is obviously undergoing very big changes. And this transition is primarily triggered by a combination of factors, and those include changing shopper expectations and behaviors that lead to a desire for more frictionless shopping, as well as by, of course, the new emerging technologies that can deliver better labor efficiency and time savings, and of course makes retailers and brands want to test and invest in them. However, with new checkout technologies, there's a significant threat to all the valuable impulse purchases that are happening at the checkout right now, because their merchandising space is becoming more limited, and therefore retailers across every channel will have to work with brands to come up with new ways to position product at the point of sale. So what all of this means is that although traditionally all consumers were channeled through a single central front of store to complete their purchase, now the transactional touchpoint is evolving and dispersing into multiple other ways that shoppers can receive their goods. And those we've sort of categorized those in three main buckets, which are sort of evolutions of the existing front of store, which includes things like the self-checkout and self-scanning inside the store, as well as smaller checkouts that are often merchandise free, which again is a challenge, or even healthier checkouts, which may not remove impulse products altogether, but are changing the type of impulse products that are being merchandised at the front end. Then there are alternative touch points to the front of store that are sort of linked to online ordering being fulfilled in the store. So things like click and collect and curbside pickup. And finally, there are those solutions where there's absolutely no interaction with the checkout whatsoever, which includes things like frictionless technology, like the Amazon Go concept that we mentioned earlier, and of course things like home delivery, which don't involve a store at all. The problem that arises, however, from all these new touch points is that as frictionless increases, the opportunities for impulse decrease, as we already mentioned. So, for example, it's been reported that 60% of shoppers have cut back on snack purchases since using click and collect due to their absent merchandising at the collection point. And with checkout areas accounting for 1% of a typical supermarket merchandising space and 4% of its profit, they are a highly valuable space that really needs to be replaced. And while impulse is typically associated with sugary snacks and fizzy drinks, there are impulse opportunities in stores of all channels and sizes, which makes this issue particularly urgent across the industry. So the move to make up for these lost impulse sales will need to be primarily driven by brands that sort of come up with the most suitable solutions for their relative categories and give retailers sufficient reason to adopt them. And as we'll see in the next few slides, these solutions can be implemented both in the store and outside of it, while there's also a number of retailers and brands who are already testing a number of these that we'll touch upon a few in a few minutes. Now let's take a look at some of the emerging touch points we mentioned earlier. And just as a reminder, this is only a preview of the report. The full version will have a lot more extensive analysis and will be posted on our portal in September. In the meantime, our portal can also be used to look at a lot more data and insights to sort of identify growth opportunities and optimize specific forecasts by market, channel, or retailer. So we know a lot of you are probably going into your planning processes soon. So if this is relevant to you, please make sure to reach out directly to your account manager or to contact info@planetretail.net to speak to someone on our team. So moving on into all the different and new areas where impulse will need to be recreated in the future. So retailers are investing in new developments that can be found both inside and outside of the store, with the majority of them being inside the store, of course. We're seeing anything from healthier checkouts that alter impulse away from its traditional assortment, which can be a threat to certain brands that have enjoyed this privilege, but are an opportunity for other sort of better for you brands, as well as an opportunity for existing brands to develop new, healthier product lines to sort of suit this new trend. Then we have things like serviced click and collect counters and automated pickup machines that are currently bare and offer no products for purchase. Self-checkouts that are certainly not a new concept, but definitely one that can be leveraged for additional spending, and all the way to sort of the most innovative technologies that offer a completely frictionless experience. And in terms of out-of-store developments, we're seeing a lot more curbside pickup location where there's even less likelihood that the shopper will ever enter the store when they're picking up their order, or remote collection lockers and things like that, where again, there's no interaction with the store. Now I've selected a couple of these new touch points for this webinar, so I'll just start off with checkout-less technology, which is sort of the front-end solution that we expect will disrupt the shopping experience the most, as it revolutionizes the way that retailers and brands will interact and sort of understand their shoppers. So as you probably know, the way it works is it uses a number of ceiling-mounted cameras as well as artificial intelligence to sort of closely track a shopper's movements in the store. And what it does is it recognizes when a product has been picked up from the shelf or when it has been placed back by the shopper, and therefore gradually aggregates the shopper's basket as they move through the store. And then at the end of the trip, it takes payment from the shopper's linked account as he or she exits the store, making it possible for the shopper to just skip the checkout line entirely. And although the application of checkout-less technology is currently very limited, with most of these applications being in experimental stages, it is very crucial for brands to rethink their merchandising strategies to best facilitate this technology. And in general, right now, the most suitable channels are sort of smaller size stores, so more convenience type stores like the Amazon Go one, but the future potential really lies in larger, more complex stores. So that's what we expect to see in the next few years. And aside from the popular Amazon Go concept, there are other similar examples as well, including the Zero line in Ireland, which is the one pictured on the right-hand side here. And then we've done some research of the top 5 global retailers to see sort of what they're placing their bets on. And we see here that 3 of the top 5 global retailers are already testing such concept, and we sort of expect them to be vital leaders in developing and perfecting this type of technology. In terms of out-of-store developments, curbside pickup will naturally be a big opportunity to drive impulse, in our opinion. So aside from players like H-E-B and CVS in the US, Amazon has also rolled out its own version of the service, and it's called Amazon Fresh Pickup Location. It's pictured here in the center. Those are located in Seattle, and they use license plate recognition technology to instantly identify a shopper's car when he's driving into the facility, and therefore can immediately alert employees to bring out their order. And what's unique about this Amazon Fresh Pickup locations is that there's an adjacent indoor space where the retailer has set up displays to showcase some of its private label brands. So aside from sort of educating shoppers about the products, which can obviously change based on seasonality or the location demographics or anything like that, it's also a very good way to link to impulse purchases by either allowing shoppers to buy the products in the facility on the spot, or even by offering something like a coupon for shoppers to use if they want to purchase this later online. And finally, Walmart is by far the leader in this initiative. They already have more than 1,800 locations in the US and the UK, and they've also committed to 1,000 more in the US by the end of 2018. So obviously sort of placing their bets on this. And at the same time, Carrefour also has a very strong presence of drive locations in France, which it has operated since 2010. So obviously something that a lot of retailers are placing their bets on, and so a big opportunity for brands to be merchandising impulse products here. However, to leverage these different touch points, brands are coming up with a number of creative solutions to instigate impulse. And the way we've categorized these is based on where the product is fulfilled, so whether it's in store or out of store, and how the customer engages with it, so whether it's online or offline. And this leads to sort of 4 distinct categories for investment. And as you can see here, Those include pickup prompts on the top left here. And that's anything from delivering mobile push notifications close to the time of pickup. So as the person is going to the pickup location, receive some type of notification that prompts them to add one less item in their order. In-store innovation, so this includes anything from product adjacencies in the store, which is obviously not something new, but is something that can really be reinvented to be much more effective, or even dedicated brand zones that inspire impulse purchases just away from the traditional checkout area. Then we have things like online optimized solutions, so guiding shoppers when they're shopping online to add more things to their online baskets. And finally, curbside capture, where shoppers sort of get access to adjacent vending machines next to the curbside pickup area to sort of buy additional products of their choice. So the way we define in-store innovation in this instance is the opportunity to trade impulse opportunities across the wider store. In other words, to flex beyond the front of store. And because as the front of store checkout space is repurposed, brands can be creative and sort of trade other areas harder. For example, they can use effective product adjacencies that include, for example, soft drinks with ambient and chilled snacks. As you can see here on the left-hand side, this is something that Coca-Cola has done in Spain. Or they can complement deli counters or food courts with associated products. So whether that's beverages to accompany the food or any other pairings. Or, as is the case with Coca-Cola on the right-hand side here, what they did in a Carrefour store in Barcelona is they invented sort of an in-store dedicated zone called the Refresher Zone, which is sort of an eye-catching display that has all of its products and gives sort of a sense of experience. And in this instance, this Refresher Zone is located towards the back of the store, so obviously a very unique area to sort of instigate impulse. Curbside capture is sort of the opportunity to capture an impulse sale when the customer does not physically enter a store. So while they're picking up their online order outside of the store. And with online ordering obviously surging and curbside locations growing, we think it's very important for brands to take advantage of this space to somehow instigate an additional purchase. And so, for example, something that Hershey has done, as you can see here on the right, is they are testing a special vending machine next to the click and collect area where shoppers can purchase additional snacks while they wait for their cart to be loaded. At the same time, another similar example is PepsiCo on the left-hand side here, which has rolled out Hello Goodness vending kiosks that can be pretty much placed anywhere outside the store or inside at the same time, or even at a non-retail location, and can be sort of independent thanks to their embedded sort of payment portal. Finally, brands and retailers can engage shoppers online in various ways to sort of create the opportunity for an unplanned purchase. For example, retailers can add basket prompts that remind shoppers of a previous purchase that they made that they potentially might want to make again. They can recommend a complementary product the same way they would create a product adjacency in a store, or they can point out specific promotions that are relevant to the shopper. For example, Sainsbury's, as you can see here on the left, is known for its Before You Go page, which appears right before the shopper goes on to the checkout page, and of course has a few opportunities for the shopper to add one or two more things to his or her basket. From a brand's perspective, on the right-hand side here, it's most beneficial to connect with shoppers in a way that helps them sort of solve a problem or offer a tip. For example, Unilever's Cleanopedia website provides tips and advice for solving common household cleaning problems. And Unilever brands that support that type of solution that's mentioned then have links that people can click on to directly sort of purchase the product. And in the example here on the right, what Unilever is doing is it's giving a tip regarding sort of the proper cleaning of shower curtains, which can be done using its Persil liquid detergent product. So consumers can read that tip and then directly purchase the product conveniently. Now, to take a look into some specific CPG sector developments, we have selected the food and beverage category. So in terms of pickup prompts, we've used the example of Magnum ice cream, where Unilever used beacon technology to sort of alert shoppers through a mobile app when they were nearby a Tesco store in the UK, or even when they were inside the store, to sort of prompt them to make an ice cream purchase. For online optimized, Unilever's other brand, Hellmann's, partnered with the on-demand delivery startup QuickUp in London. And what they did was that shoppers could look at different recipes that include the Hellmann's dressings, which include like mayonnaise and ketchup. And then if they wanted to make that meal, they could order all the fresh ingredients from the recipe and have them all delivered all at once, where of course all the products would include the Hellmann's products. Then in terms of in-store impulse, again, Unilever partnered with Sainsbury's and introduced sort of ice cream parlors in UK stores, and those were from the Ben & Jerry's brand. And what this did is it sort of created an unusual experience in the store, which could attract a person to make an impulse purchase. And then finally, for curbside capture, an example that I briefly mentioned earlier as well is the Amazon Fresh Pickup locations that have an adjacent space, as you can see on the bottom right here, where Amazon is showcasing some of its brands. In this occasion, it's showcasing its private label brands, such as Happy Belly, but of course this could change and different brands could fight to sort of merchandise their own products in this space and therefore sort of instigate impulse again. So with that, I'd like to bring this webinar to a close. Again, please note that the completed report will have a lot more solutions for all the other sectors, such as household and pet care, health and beauty, and consumer electronics. And it will obviously have a lot more information and best-in-class applications and supplier implications. And it will be available on the Planet Retail portal in the month of September. So I'd now like to welcome any questions that may have come up. Okay, so there is a question about household products. So is there an example of in-store impulse recreated for household products? Yes, there are a couple actually. One that comes to my mind is one that Sam's Club is doing. So Sam's Club has been using something called Freeosks, which are sort of automated vending machines that dispense free samples when a Sam's Club member taps his card. And they can also sort of pitch the product via video. So this is sort of a good way to attract someone to try your product and then decide to buy it. I hope that answers the question. Let's see if there's anything else. So there's one about the checkout experience. So how big of an impact can a bad checkout experience have for consumers? So that's a very good question. We actually sort of mentioned this in the beginning of the presentation. So there's been research that says that about 50% of consumers consider the checkout to be very important in their shopping experience. So in other words, if the checkout experience is bad, then that significantly sort of affects their experience. And as I also mentioned, that can also lead to sort of loss of revenue because people might decide to leave the store or shop elsewhere or shop online or anything like that. So it's very crucial to make sure that in line with competition, sort of your checkout is frictionless and sort of easy and fast and sort of technology enabled. And finally, there's one more question. What about mobile checkout? Yes, that's definitely a good one as well. We're including that in the full report. we definitely think that that's something that a lot of retailers will want to adopt. You might already know that Apple, for example, is a flagship example that uses mobile checkout. And by mobile checkout, what I understand is someone being able to sort of check out on the go. So an employee having a tablet or a phone and being able to check out for you on the floor, not for you not to have to go to the checkout lane. And yes, this is something that a couple of retailers are looking into. So I'm sure you've seen Target, for example, equipping its employees with tablets so that they can offer the service. And even Walmart, I believe in its sort of gardening department, shoppers can check out without having to go inside. So the employees sort of have a mobile device where they can just check out for the shopper. And yes, this does add convenience and it sort of happens on the spot and is definitely something that we think will also be important in the future. So I think our time is up. If we will follow up with any more questions that have come through after this webinar. Again, if you'd like to access any more of our insights and the proprietary data we have, please don't hesitate to visit our portal at any time. And if you would like our help answering any of your strategic questions, please contact your account manager to sort of discuss advisory projects that can be tailored to your needs. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Have a great afternoon.